Yes, thank you so much. So once again, thank you all to coming to the Growth CVC call. Today, we're going to, so some of the scopes have changed, as some of you guys might know. It used to be 12, now it got merged into 5. So for today, we're going to talk about the exhibitability scope. And for this one, some different scopes got merged, but especially we want to kind of talk about the toolkit because some of the especially marketing and branding side was kind of covered before, right, for the growth scope. So today we have Dennis. Maybe you can introduce and then kind of introduce about like especially in terms of like some of the abilities, some of the DAO tooling and others for our ABC.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lou, for the intro. Hey everyone, my name is Xerox Dennis. I'm currently a core unit facilitator of the DAX core unit, which stands for Development and UX. We're currently preparing to transition away from the core unit model. Hopefully, we can achieve that in the next governance cycle. So be on the lookout for more announcements there. Our team is a product team that's mostly doing front end work and like data infrastructure. So naturally, the accessibility scope and also previously the interface scope has been really relevant for us as a team, and we've been doing a lot of thinking on that front as well. I will be honest by saying that I think the exact processes and also even the roles when it comes to the accessibility scope, it's all very much in flux and it's still very undefined. So it's not like I can show you like a fancy presentation and tell you exactly what I believe it's going to look like. But what I can do is provide a perspective from someone who's actively working on building front ends and also talking to people like Rune and also other people within the, let's say, endgame execution group when it comes to what the accessibility scope will entail. So I think an important thing to note is that the accessibility scope is a merger of the previously called interface scope and growth scope. And I think it's important to note that I believe these two domains are complementary in the sense that they should be working together in practice. But we should also realize that they're entirely different domains, right? So it requires a completely different set of skills and also a completely different expertise. And I also therefore believe that the future state of the accessibility scope should also include those two distinct skill sets and expertise basis, so to say. I think it's really important for the accessibility scope that it's going to be able to regulate all of the interfaces that will be prevalent in the MakerDAO ecosystem. And the unique thing about, or the big thing that's going to change compared to the status quo is that right now we have something like the governance portal and we have something like MakerDAO.com, and we have all of these like official front ends that people use to interact with the Maker protocol. We've already seen with things like Oasis and DeFi Saver that the way to interact with some of these on-chain components is already more decentralized, and there's no longer like one official MakerDAO front end. But yeah, we're going to see even more of this. And the task, or one of the tasks of the accessibility scope, will be regulating this. So making sure that for all of the front ends out there, there are clear requirements for all of these front ends. And requirements need to be defined on various levels. You have something like functional requirements, which basically describes the functionality that a front end offers. Those can be captured in functional requirements, and I think it's going to be pretty easy for the accessibility scope to come up with some kind of template to use, or some kind of, I don't know, we need to basically find a way to have some kind of document that can be iterated upon as part of the accessibility alignment artifact. So that's the first one, functional requirements. The second one I would call non-functional requirements or quality requirements. And these are not so much related to what the front ends offer, but more so how they are offered. And it usually relates to performance, it relates to resilience, And I think especially for a project like Maker, it's super important that those requirements are captured really well, because they will decide how resilient and how user-friendly and how accessible these front ends will be. And I think that also, looking at the work that we're now doing at Docs, that's really the big difference compared to our work on the governance portal, for example. We're really building our code to optimize for resilience and to set the bar really high when it comes to the non-functional requirements. But then there's also security requirements that I think should also be addressed. And I'm personally not really sure what that would look like, but I think it should address something like physical resilience, right? So basically describing which jurisdictions or which type of users should not be allowed, should not be able to use these front ends or have access to them. But also, I don't know, maybe something related to what would happen if a front end goes down. So as you can tell from the way that I'm talking, it's all very early stage, I think. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is that the accessibility scope, or at least the advisory council of the accessibility scope, should have the expertise and the skill set to be able to define these, to define and maintain these requirements, but also enforce them. Another important thing I wanted to mention is that there's going to be multiple front ends in the Maker ecosystem that will no longer be maintained and updated by a centralized party like Docs, right? It's going to be, for example, with the sub-DAOs, each sub-DAO will host and maintain their own sub-DAO app. And I think it would be wise for the accessibility scope or the accessibility alignment artifact or council to make sure that there's some kind of driving force that regulates when sub-DAOs or when hosting providers or owners of certain applications in the MakerDAO ecosystem perform updates. For example, the sub-DAO app, the Docs team is currently working on this kind of foundational code base that can be used by the sub-DAOs to very easily have like a V1 of their application live. And this code base, it's using a lot of Web3 technology in order to meet the requirements that I just mentioned, right? The resiliency requirements. The thing is that the technology landscape moves very rapidly, right? And all of these, let's say, components or libraries that we rely on for this application, they're constantly being updated. Sometimes the updates are not really that impactful, but sometimes they really change the playing field, and they should be, they should warrant like an app upgrade throughout all of these apps. But then there's also the matter.
I think you got cut off, maybe.
You can already tell that this would basically maintaining a fresh overview of the state of technology, and also being able to advise and define the requirements, and also enforce this. That requires a very specific skill set and knowledge base that should be part of the advisory council. So I think last week Mariano from the growth team was speaking, and probably he talked about very different topics. We're working together quite a lot because obviously the work that he's doing when it comes to the brand and like communication, that needs to have a direct line of communication and coordination with the teams that are building front ends and data infrastructure. But obviously these are completely different fields in terms of skill set, and I'm not sure what it should look like. But I'm just looking at the agenda here. The big question is, what should the advisory council look like for this scope? I'm not really sure, but hopefully this this ramble helped you understand a little bit like the potential responsibilities of this advisory council and what type of skills and knowledge would be required.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And yes, as you mentioned, it is the early stage, and I think it also deals with other say ecosystem actors as well as scopes. As you mentioned, it's something that also needs to, for example, have from the security side as well as from the branding side, and many others. Okay, so Bonapublica said the DAO toolkit should also include privacy-preserving tools and resources. I do think that it's something that also needs also probably collaboration with the physical resilience. I think that's also a part that Dennis was also making was like in the future, once the tools be more decentralized, not relying on the single party, right?
Yeah, I think what's also important to note is that when reading the accessibility alignment artifact as it currently stands, you can tell there are some references to the DAO toolkit, which is basically going to be this, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's basically the future of the expenses dashboard, right? I think that's a good way to frame it. I think there's also a direct reference to the easy governance front end, which is this future new front end that will not be live this year. It will probably be halfway next year or so. But I think we have to realize that there's going to be a lot of other front ends that all need to be able to use the accessibility alignment artifact as a point of reference when it comes to, okay, if we want to build a front end as part of the DAO, as part of this ecosystem, and also participate in certain incentive programs and stuff, our application needs to meet the requirements that are set through the accessibility alignment artifact. So yeah, just wanted to also share that we shouldn't zoom into the DAO toolkit or any other specific front ends too much, but rather try to, or rather come up with a way to to define and maintain these requirements in a way that they can be used by any by any team that wants to build a front end for basically anything, right? And it can be something like what Spark Protocol is now working on. They're really building a new product on top of the Maker protocol, but it could also be something related to Maker governance, right? Which is it's a very specific type of front end in terms of functionality.
One question, Dennis, if I may. I think that from what I've heard, that this accessibility scope and especially like the interface part should actually get into quite a lot of detail about like what's allowed and not allowed for front ends to be or not to be, because I think clearly there's a lot of technology out there that is very convenient to use, but that is actually very privacy that creates huge data sinks, like anything that basically uses cookies and Google Analytics and all this fun stuff that makes web development easy and that users are kind of used to, but I think in the context of Maker then creates a lot of problems. So I think, do you think this kind of language should be added to the scope, or how? I mean, at the moment it's kind of thin. So like, where do you see the greatest areas of development there?
Yeah, so I think that's exactly right. I think these are matters that need to be included in the scope somehow, or in the alignment artifact. I keep saying scope, but I should be saying alignment artifact. And I think what's very important here is that the language that we use, or the way that we express these requirements or these like needs, are requirements, functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and security requirements. I don't know. Because we need to make sure that we speak the language that a product team or a development team speaks, right? Because if we end up explaining those requirements like in a very weird textual way, then they might be hard to interpret, and it's going to be hard to enforce also. Whereas if you have well-defined and well-structured product requirements, maybe even in a way that they can easily be tested, or you can very easily say, this does not meet and this does meet the requirement, then it's going to be very easy for various teams all over the world to interpret that, and and also for the scope to then use that as a reference for the enforcement. So my point is that for this particular area of focus of the accessibility alignment artifact, it should be handled like a traditional software development project where you define requirements in that specific language. The problem is I'm not really sure how that should be structured, because that should be part of the alignment artifact, but ideally it's going to be some kind of sub artifact that you can easily iterate on, because it's going to see many iterations, I think. And I don't think it would be wise that every single iteration would require a lot of overhead in order for it to change.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's more operation thing, but I just saw the comment on the Gov Alpha about like what is the best way to have the topics for meeting. So since it's now changed to 5 in the new process, we're just gonna cover those 5 again, which means that we'll probably have opportunity to talk about this accessibility scope again as well. So of course we don't need to come to all the, we're not gonna come to all the conclusions today anyway, but I just want to kind of share that like we'll have another time to talk about it. Then regard to that, Rafael, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know I'm asking this every week, but so our responsibility for ABC is cover the scope and then talk about advisor side, right? That's kind of our primary role now.
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I didn't understand the sentence.
So we need to talk about the advisor for this scope, right? Like,
yeah, totally. I mean, I think what we need to produce is, in the document, we need to have like requirements for these advisors, for like members of the advisory council, and then also the process. How are we going to select them? And I think we in a process, you and I can talk about a general process we would like, and then the question is that for a specific scope, is there something inherent in the scope that makes the selection process somewhat different? I mean, I don't know. I think for this scope, probably not. But requirements, I think, is a very important topic that we should definitely cover here.
Yeah. Actually, also quickly addressing in the vigilant question as AD. I mean, yeah, we're gonna cover governance scope. Whether we need to cover it twice, is there a requirement that we need to cover it twice, or is it just like general sentiment that you feel like is helping? Because if it's like requirement, of course, then we'll try to factor that in. But if it's not a requirement, then we can maybe just cover like there is a requirement to cover it twice. Okay.
Yeah, I think that just changed because when we started out with the meetings, we had the old scopes, and now it's the 5 alignment artifacts. So, yeah, I think.
Subcommittee meetings always cover one of the 5 scopes in a weekly rotation, covering each scope twice every quarter. 10 meetings a quarter, down from 12.
Okay. Sorry. That kind of sounds like my, deviation. But okay, sounds good. Then I guess we can cover it for next 2 weeks, or maybe we can just have one meeting and then another meeting. Yeah, but I mean, opinion, I think it's better to be safe than sorry, because we also don't want to make them an excuse to give us, leeway just for that, right? So as long as we can do it, I think we should do it. But thank you for bringing it up. All right, so then let's go to talk about the advisor real quick, and then I think maybe Dennis can also kind of share about some of the perspective as well, because so some of the questions we had, right, or at least I was thinking is a little similar to others, which is like, so for the scope advisor, you can have many, but so maybe Dennis can also share our perspective. But so do you think that like ideal advisor type is somebody that's like very expert in UI UX, or do you believe it can be somebody, for example, expert in marketing and kind of help you, for example, help you with like the branding side to understand it? Or I know that it's a little bit confusing because now the scope covers like multiple, but I guess my question is it somebody that you believe should be somebody more technical, or somebody much more soft skills, but maybe creative and try to understand from the user access perspective?
Yeah, I think that was exactly the point I was trying to make earlier on. Like, we've now merged these interface and growth scopes into one. The problem is that they're entirely different domains, and I really think that you need a very specific type of skill set or like expert for both of those domains. So my answer would be both. And the weird thing is that when it comes to the, let's say, interface perspective, ideally you'd have someone that's involved in building the front ends, right? Because then you'll have someone that is actively doing research in like the state of technology and also understands the let's say the needs, the front end needs within the MakerDAO ecosystem. But the weird thing is that obviously you want to have some kind of independence from any ecosystem actor, right? So this is something that I haven't really been able to wrap my head around with when it comes to the advisory council related to accessibility. Like, ideally you'd have an advisor that's already doing the work, right? But then, of course, then there's the risk of, there's the theoretical risk of capture, right? Where you have a biased person on the advisory council. So that's something I'm not really sure about yet, but I definitely think, to answer your question, I think you need both. I think that's very important.
Are there like any reference projects that come to mind, like projects that you look up to where you say like, hey, they are really doing, like, blazing the trail that you want to walk, or is that like completely new ground?
What do you mean exactly, Raphael? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So if there are any projects that you can kind of reference where you say like, okay, they are actually already building a lot of the stuff that we are looking to build, or if what you are doing is like completely new, because then we could look at like, hey, what kind of people are there, and we could kind of cross check and cross reference some of the traits that we are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that with Dux, we are currently building a lot of the V1 code, right? And that's going to be used for the initial launch. We're not going to launch or host anything ourselves, but we're just building open source components that can then be used to create these front ends and host them and then iterate on them going forward. So I kind of feel like the best thing would be to just try and have a first set of requirements based on the ongoing work that's already happening within the DAO, right? And then from that point onward, I'm not really sure how it should be maintained. So I guess my answer is that the best thing would be to have a perspective from someone that's already building stuff as part of MakerDAO, and then have that as like a first iteration when it comes to the requirements. And from that point onward, I'm not sure, but then there needs to be someone, but it can be any, I think it can be any person who has decent experience with like software development projects and requirements engineering to maintain and enforce that. I don't think that's going to be that difficult. So that might be a good, that could be a good hire for the advisory council. And that doesn't necessarily have to be someone that's already involved in the DAO in some capacity.
Thanks, Lo.
All right, that was very helpful. Actually, just more this is, I guess, sorry, operation question, but so one of the 5 scope is growth scope. So it's not accessibility scope, but it is growth scope. I guess I misunderstood it. Is that correct? Because I see that.
I don't think so, actually. I think growth and interface merged to become accessibility.
Right.
But it
Yeah,
might
and
be
that
that
was-
I'm out of date.
Yeah, because at least from the, what I saw was the governance and the support, protocol, stability, and accessibility. But maybe mine is late or like it should be a change, but somebody can correct me. Yeah, it's the stability, support, protocol, accessibility, and governance. Okay. Yeah, because else. Yeah, okay. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, so okay. So we just need to talk about governance twice before we end this one. Sounds good. All right, so we kind of talk about some of the basic advisor things. Okay. Okay. It's just copy and paste. All right. Anything else that you believe that we should cover, Rafael?
No, I think it's from my perspective, it's fine because like our concern as an ABC is really drafting this advisory council requirement, right? And I think the perspective that Dennis gave was super valuable, and I completely agree that like we definitely need somebody on the advisory council who has like the inside knowledge of Maker, but then we just need capable people who know how to develop front ends for Web3, because they will have some insights into like what kind of scopes, what kind of language makes sense in the scopes, and how to enforce possible conflicts. So I think we're fine. Actually, since we then probably have more time, we could also switch to the governance scope today.
Yep, sounds good. I think that especially for the next few meetings, we're going to revisit the now 5 scopes, and then I think we're going to focus on the advisor. I think maybe what Rafael and I can work on when we have time is all the details for the advisor, like recommendations or some of the process, right? I actually don't know how, like, maybe Rafael others know about it, but like, are we supposed to compete with other CVC about like how to help with the advisory, or is it more like, oh, we have a like, general idea, here's our suggestion, and then facilitators take the idea and try to put on the vote? Like, do we know what's the process? Or do we need to talk to other CVCs to like agree on, or like how does it work? Because we've been also looking at other CVCs and their structure for like trying to help with the advisor recommendations, right, or the process. I will take silence with people are not sure yet.
So I think that the general structure is not defined, or we can basically just do it how we want. So I think there are no, at least to my mind, no really tight quality requirements. I think we just do our best, and then this is our document that, of course, once we have something, we can give it to our aligned delegates to cross-check if like everything is in place, and to just dot some I's and cross some T's, and I think then we're kind of good to go.
All right, yeah, then let's try that one. All right, since at least in terms of topic, I think we talked pretty fast today, but any other topics or related topics that we missed that we should talk about? Well, today the crowd is pretty tough. Rafael, should we call it a day, or what's your thought?
Yeah, happy to call it a day, and then let's touch governance scope next time, and then we can prepare a little, so now that we're not like grasping in the dark.
Yep, let's do that. Sounds good. But yeah, especially for, I think, Rafael and I, like, as the deadline is approaching, like, we'll definitely work on the advisor documents more. And then I'm not sure how much delegates can help with it, like, for the political, they can check. But as long as it's like allowed, then also is encouraged, like, we'll try to see. All right, then thank you everyone for coming. And actually, Rafael, you cannot make it next week, right? You say you have another, I think.
Oh yeah, right. Next week I'm out of office. That's correct.
Yeah.
But
No
I can
worries.
help preparing the agenda, and we can also start working on the language for our documents, and then maybe we have something to send to delegates.
Yep. Yeah. Unfortunately, it won't be as fun as having with Rafael, but I will try my best to entertain you guys. All right. Then see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Stu. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.